I welcome you all in today's session. Coronavirus pandemic is spreading like wildfire across the globe. We here in Eco India believe the dissemination of knowledge on transmission, home care management, vaccination, and clinical management of COVID has to reach everyone at this point. With this today, our speaker, Dr. Ghotekar, will speak and address queries on the topic COVID 19 holistic approach. Considering the interconnectedness between human, environment, and animal health, the one holistic health approach is the appropriate strategy to control and mitigate the effects of the ongoing virus. Today's webinar is all about the health approach and recommends specific measures that could be taken to accelerate the fight against COVID 19 and prevent the spread of emerging infectious diseases. With this note, I would like to hand over today's session to my colleague, Dr. Deepa Jha, who's from Eco India DGM. Over to you, Deepa. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paramita. Today, Eco India and SBI Foundation are running its sixth session of the series, COVID Education Series. And the topic, like said by Paramita, is COVID-19, a holistic approach. The pandemic is a global crisis and it had devastating impact on everyone, people, organizations, industries, institutions across the world. The world is combating the ongoing pandemic. A staggering amount of cases are asymptomatic. The numbers are rising. In India, the death toll are rising. The prevention strategies to disrupt transmission are being revisited. The virus has mutated. The approach based solely on symptom tracking, testing and treating will not be sufficient to prevent the virus. It needs to consider a lot of other factors. Like I always say, COVID-19 does not take a toll on our physical health but also on our mental well-being. From identifying, screening, testing, maintaining precautionary measures, working on home care management, health care management, generating awareness, treating the comorbidities, expanding the vaccination coverage, maybe preparedness of any further surge in COVID cases, a lot needs to be done. With the second wave in India and the increase in cases, steroidal therapies have started in a big way, leading to rising blood sugar and increasing risk of black fungal or mucormycosis infections. Monitoring blood sugar level, taking proper diet, maintaining the healthy lifestyle is very important now. Managing COVID-19 is definitely not to be seen in silo. Hence, a holistic perspective towards the management is very important. There are a lot of questions like how do we use the modern, the natural and traditional methods to prevent the spread of virus? How do we build on our immunity? How do we stay positive? How do we maintain a healthy regime? How can we be compassionate while maintaining the social distancing? How do we deal with the stress? How do we deal with the fear? How do we do exercise? Does pranayam really work? What kind of lung exercises should be done? What level of sanitization should be done every time I step outside the house? When I come back, what should be the things that I should adapt? How can I be ready, alert and aware about the virus? All these needs to be unpacked. And for this today, we have our eminent guest speaker, Dr. L.H. Ghotekar, who will be speaking on the topic COVID-19, a holistic approach. Dr. Ghotekar is Director Professor Medicine in Premier Medical Institute of Delhi and has more than 35 years of clinical and teaching experience. He is guide and examiner to many universities. Dr. Ghotekar published more than 60 articles, papers in national and international journals and textbooks. He is member and fellow of many professional bodies, to name a few: Association of Physicians of India, Indian Association of Hematology, Indian Association of Nephrology, Indian Society of Hemodialysis, member of National Academy of Medical Science, Indian Society of Peritoneal Dialysis, UP Diabetes Association, IMA Delhi, Noida, fellow of Indian Association of Clinical Medicine, fellow of International Medical Science Academy. He has been conferred many awards like the M.J. Shah Young Scientist Award for the best paper presented at National Conference of the Indian Association of Physicians in 2000. He is also awarded Fellowship of Peritoneal Dialysis UK. He has been invited as key speaker, chairperson and judge at many national and international conferences. Without taking much of your time, let's begin with the session. May I please invite Dr. L.H. Ghotekar to start the session. Welcome, sir. Over to you, sir, now.
गुड इवनिंग, नमस्कार सबको। पैंडेमिक के टाइम में स्माइलिंग चेहरे देखने काफी अच्छे लगते हैं, लोग काफी दुखी है और हम आज I would really thank Eco India for organizing such a session and creating an awareness and spreading knowledge, and SBI Foundation. They are doing a great job. I would like to say that we are not here to create any panic. We are here to help you out, and we together can prevent lots of death and morbidity. We can save a lot of people's misery, financial and physical also, right? So what can be done? वैसे तो Google University and everything, as we all are aware, there are two doctors, one is WhatsApp doctor and Google doctor. So many people are very much aware of it, right? But still there is so much confusion. What to do and how it can be. So I'll just try to simplify it. What is our role? How what best we can do at individual basis and as a society basis. So just I hope you are able to see this slide.
No, sir. I
Not
think
yet?
not yet. Not yet.
Okay. Now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, right. So see, first of all, approach should be proactive. Why we as an India suffer a lot? Because probably somewhere we went wrong, individually and as a whatever level you can see it. But still now, why we lose so young people? Because a lot of people are not being proactive. They are not taking care of what is happening with them. They are taking it very casual approach. Like if it's happening to other people, it may be happening to me and I'll recover. So yes, 80%, yes, being a positive is always good. But 80% people recover, but what about the 20% through which there is a lot of the damage is happening? So delay in identifying is the major problem, and unfortunately, timely intervention at various level. But let's talk at individual, what can we do, right? So the major problem I always say is to only ignorance. In spite of, as I say, so many universities are talking about WhatsApp and Google, still we are not totally knowledgeable. Or some people say that we know everything, and they become arrogant. Nothing can happen wrong with you. Good. If nothing goes wrong, it's good. But why not be proactive? So these two problems we can be easily tackled. So now when we had a COVID-19 in 2020, we were talking about a stepwise approach. Now the things have changed. Stepwise approach remains only for the phase one, yeah, first week or a 3-4 day. But early massive action is very, very crucial. And that's the point where if you understand, we will win the race, right? So this is the one which you understand. The first message is early massive action. Massive action does not mean that you bombard or load everything on. Okay, what is that? I'll go step by. So first it's always, as the Vipaji said about, precaution is very important, right? This all of us know that. Still we were little bit reluctant, we were casual, and that's why the second wave has cropped up so much. So what we have to do is that still we have to be very cautious about what we are going to do. Then build your immunity. That is the key factor. You need to build your immunity. See. Now when we'll talk about some people with this is an hyperimmunity reactions, I'll clarify that. First, those victims still stand together. If both people are wearing a mask, the probability of developing this virus or infection is absolutely become 1.5%. So negligible. See how much we could have prevented if we would have followed this, right? Now we understand, then we start blaming. So let's not blame anybody. It has to be, onus should lies on us, right? And this, for 1 or 2 years, or as I said, we victims there, don't touch men and just follow women, but in a right perspective. Wash your hands, obey directives, move away from crowded places, exercise regularly. So there is a big role of it. And never ignore warning signals. This is very, very important. And as we said many times in my talk, I say that this is the most important quote I like. It mask is better than the ventilator, home is safe than nursing home, and prevention is better than cure. This is what we have to understand. So take a proper step. Now, what can we do? So as we told, whenever you have any problem, just isolate yourself. Wear a mask, double mask, surgical 3-layer or N95. Sanitization, avoid alkaline sanitization. Soap-based sanitization is better. How much hot water and other do is questionable, but lung exercise, building that, yoga is very, very crucial, right? Gargling when you have early symptoms in the throats, yes, that is very important. Stimulation and other things. Vitamin C is proven beyond doubt that it is definitely helps as an antioxidant. So vitamin D, vitamin C has to be, but that is not the only one which you have to take care of. Now let's see what are the symptoms. Is this different than the COVID-1 phase or 19? Absolutely. Now here what is happening, a fever lasting for a day or two, on some patient it lasts for a longer time. So one where the patient feels that fever is only for 1 or 2 hours, what nothing, I'm absolutely okay. And then the problem goes on. They develop a dry cough, a small bout of cough, and they don't bother. So here is the problem. But here, what is this? This is a warning signal. Say what I said, this is a warning signal. You have to now think of it and don't get panic about it, but be an alert. Okay. So then you have to think of the what are the chest symptoms may or may not appear immediately. Normally they develop at the later phase of life, right? Phase of the disease. And then sometime RT-PCR is fooling us. It comes negative and we said, oh, it's not a COVID, okay. Because 30% patient did not have RT-PCR positive. Either could be false technology or could be the false recognition. Something may be wrong, okay. It is said that probably the mutant virus is the different. So there are various reasons for it. I'm not going to detail of it. And then what happened, as soon as the second week starts, there is a rapid deterioration. And there is the problem where we are doing. Even if that says if you treat it properly, nothing is going to be done. But what massive action is required after that. And as I said, feeling of well-being actually fools us. सब कुछ ठीक हो गया ऐसा लगता है, but that is the problem here. What happening? Now coming what could be. So what are the other symptoms in detail? If you sorry. So what are the things there? Most common is fever, dry cough, and tiredness. These are the initial. Less common body aches, pain, sore throat. Some people develop diarrhea for 1 or 2 days. Then some people develop conjunctivitis. Conjunctivitis can be sole symptom of uneasiness or headache. Loss of taste may or may not be there. Then some people develop some rashes or discoloration. So these are the various less common symptoms. As soon as person notices difficulty in breathing after 6 minute walk, or the person gets his antenna should get alert. If any pressure in the chest means there is some congestion happening and you have a difficulty.
Sir, I'm really sorry, but can I just take a minute? There is a
Sure.
sound at your background. It could be of a fan or something, which is
Oh yeah,
creating a little
okay.
bit of a
Sure,
yeah
yeah, I can.
yeah.
Thank
So
you so much. Thank you so much for making. I'll just cut it off. 1 minute.
yes, sir.
Out that I just realized it. Okay. So difficulty in breathing or shortness of breath or chest congestion, difficulty in chest actually. This can be a warning signal and they require a immediate medical attention. So you should have delayed it and you should immediately seek an attention of some senior doctor. Okay. Now coming to the next is that what? See, now COVID is not only limited to the lung. It can affect almost all organs of the body. Heart, muscles, kidney, GI tract, brain, neurological, everything, and some amount of hormonal, right? So these things we have to realize. But though the symptomatology, sometimes a post-COVID syndromes, which include this organ involvement, is also there. I'll tackle it in my next talk. Okay. Now this is called one is COVID, where pneumonia is more predominantly, then post-COVID syndrome. What is this different? How it is different? I'll speak in my. Now, what is most important? The message is just don't rely too much on symptom. As I said, it might fool you. I'm feeling of well-being, but that might fool you. Unless you should testing yourself, there is something mystic is happening. So what we have to do? On the day 3, 4, you just immediately get your self-test for, beside the RT-PCR or rapid antigen test, CBC, ASR, CRP, this is the blood investigation one has to do. Start treatment immediately. Ivermectin, azithromycin, vitamin D, vitamin. This is not the sufficient treatment, right? This is not the antiviral treatment, right? Compared some amount of ivermectin as an immunomodulator, azithromycin has got some antiviral activity. But this is not only for the COVID or coronavirus. It is just, yes, some of the asymptomatic or mild symptomatic patients can get cured with this. As it may get cure of its own or it may help because of that. But now what happens, the additional treatment you can start it. And here H2 blocker ranitidine is better than the pantoprazole, right? Probiotic. And once the say day 3, day 4, day 5, when the allergic reaction starts, we have a 4 types of allergy. The first allergy is like developing on some allergic reaction, right? And here antihistaminics H1 receptor blocker, promethazine or phenoxyethanol works out very well. So this particular treatment will help you to prevent some sort of congestion in the body. Along with that, when should we start favipiravir? Now, as we know, once I say what indicators are there, even if your RT-PCR negative, but you have a symptoms, maybe fever for 1, 2 or mild cough. But if any other indicator suggests like CRP is high, ferritin is elevated, D-dimer may not be elevated in first 4, 5 days a week, but LDH is elevated, altered liver enzymes is there, like AST, is elevated. Chest CT should not be done in first 3, 4 days, in my opinion. There is of no point doing it. Unless and until you have a severe cough and 4, 6 days, there is a difficulty in breathing, that time. So best CT design is at the end of the first week or the beginning of the second week. That's very important. Okay. Now what has to be done? But this is the one parameter which you have to closely monitor. Interleukin 6. Okay. JAK particularly gets activated, and that's actually how does the virus enters in the respiratory tract initially through the throat, and what happens to that? Then it multiplies, replicates, and then it goes into the membrane, and from there it rapidly spreads. Okay, and there the cytokine storms have developed. This usually happens in the end of the first week or beginning of the second week. So here we have to keep on monitoring this particular parameter. What is to be? Now, if you ask me, there are only two medication which has been authenticated and proved. One is anticoagulant, because of once the cytokine storm, the coagulation profile gets deranged and it is causing clotting inside the respiratory tract. So this is very, very crucial. Either heparin, lomonosave, or oral anticoagulant in the form of rivaroxaban or apixaban. These two drugs are very good, very safe relatively. And the most crucial is steroid. How does steroid act? Because it's as an anti-inflammatory and it prevents the cytokine storm. So steroid dose depends. There are various forms of steroid, cortisol or methylprednisolone. Any of them good, but I prefer to use methylprednisolone. If you are hospitalized and you are specially to give an injection, then Dexa is another good drug. Dose of methylprednisolone varies individually, depends on comorbidities, severity, viral load, interleukin 6 level or CRP level. This all depend. But on an average, around 16 milligram today start with, or you can give it 32 milligram or even 8 milligram twice a day or single per day, depends on different conditions. So how long it will be, let the clinician decide. But the most crucial for any person to know is that once you are on steroid, start monitoring blood sugar. Because if the blood sugar get deranged, this is called steroid-induced diabetes mellitus. Or there is some people have already a latent diabetes that get triggered off and that manifests. So this one we have to do, and we have to monitor the blood sugar. A lot of people doing this mistake particularly. Please be aware of it. Keep monitoring blood sugar. That is very crucial, because otherwise this is what we are talking about, the mucormycosis fungus infection, is because of all these problems. Now, as I said, the WHO and other countries, they are not mentioning any particular specific antiviral drugs, but there are so many drugs which has given a promising result. Favipiravir has found to be decrease the overall stay or prevent the mechanical. So this is a big hallmark. So favipiravir can be started at the early phase of first week of COVID positive patients. Those definitely, a lot of people change their, I've seen a lot of prescription making it to the 800 milligram or definitely, you have to monitor and give it according to the liver function test. What is the weight of it? But on an average, 1800 milligram, 12 hours apart, first day, and then 800 milligram, 12 hours apart on the day 2 to day 5, because it has studied that even 5-day course is equally beneficial as 10 days course. So it depends on 5 to 10 days. Right. Weight as and the doses, as I said, should be done. Okay. Additional therapy like nebulization with a Budecort or Foracort is very important. Bronchodilator like Duolin is very, very important. Seroflow of inhaler, yes, SOS users is very. Choice of antibiotic once you're on steroid has to be changed. Once you started with either azithromycin or doxycycline initially, once you start on oral steroid, I think the better go for some better antibiotic, because azithromycin may not be that effective. Patient has a comorbid condition. So augmentin or clarithromycin or a Ceftum is another good drug of choice. And then change of antibiotic if the complications develop. That let the physician decide it. Okay. So always remember, consult a good senior physician who has a good knowledge about the subject. Okay. One important thing, as I mentioned, if you are RT negative. Then what we have to rely on mostly are clinical symptoms, laboratory parameters, and then CT, where CORAD scoring 4 and 5 suggestive of highly suggestive or definitive of even COVID pneumonia. So this is very important. The radiologist and clinician will decide that it's likely to keep on monitoring the blood parameter, and treatment should be based on that. Right? Then coming to the CT score scoring. So one, as I said, CORAD scoring is where the RT-PCR is negative. Then we give a suspicious or a positive for. Then, as we know that we have a 5 lobes in our lungs, 3 on the right and 2 on the left. Based on that, we have bronchopulmonary segment. So our CT scoring, radiologist gives it depending on the how many pulmonary segments in the 5 lobes are involved. So that is 5 into divided into 25 segments, and that particular thing they label it whether how many portion of the lung is involved. Like layman, I can explain it like you have a 25 rooms in your house. How many rooms are being affected by the viral infection or pneumonia? That. So if it is less than 6, it's called mild. 7 to 15 is called moderate. More than 16 is called severe respiratory involvement. Right. So now once this severe is moderate to severe, what will happen? Saturation start dropping. And that's why you need to have a good pulse oximeter. Few days back, I have got received a WhatsApp. Even the Chinese pulse oximeter put on some potato and it was showing the reading. I was surprised to see that. Whether it's some technical glitch was there, I don't know. But maybe you have to choose a very good pulse oximeter. And don't get panic. Don't keep on monitoring every time. That's something. After 3, 4, 5 days, you can monitor it once or twice or thrice a day. Do a 6-minute walk and check whether everything is okay. That's all. Calmness is very important, but too much laxity is not allowed. Remember these two, right? Okay. Then if the saturation start dropping from 95, alert. You might require an hospitalization or a good oxygen supply, maybe with concentrator at home or cylinder at home, maybe initial requirement, but always remember when you do at home, humidification is very important of the oxygenation. And here, because a lot of people are having throat problem, then itching, and then developing a fungal infection on top of their receiving steroid. But at this moment, I have treated lots of patients at home who did not get it. As you know, all of us, we were in a different situation of some days before. Lack of bed availability facility, people do not have that much money. So in that case, a single bolus dose of Dexa or methylprednisolone 32 milligram or 40 milligram was making a lot of wonder. Beside most important, positioning of patient. How do you make it? Chest physiotherapy, bronchodilation, nebulization. This was the parameter. Because steroid used to take care of cytokine storm, another is to improve the respiratory muscles and the lung functioning or efficiency. What to be done? This is a very important slide for positioning. Okay, so very simple. There are various YouTube channels are available where you can see the V prone position. Means you have to lie down on your chest. This has to be 30 minutes to 2 hours. You can keep some pillows below the chest and one below the hip and below the foot area. This type of position is better as you feel comfortable. And this is the 30 to 30 minutes to 2 hours. Then you change it to your right lateral, then left lateral. This way you keep on doing. Or then for a short time, you can be in forward position or in supine position. Monitor saturation at this time. Right? This is very, very crucial. Okay. So goal is that try to maintain the oxygen saturation at 90 or 90 or 92. You need not worry about to take it to the 95. Okay. But below that, always be worried about because otherwise it affect the other organs of the body. Right. Okay. Now some people ask me, is there a route? Why once hospitalized remdesivir? Remdesivir has been beneficial to cut down the hospitalized stay or a duration of illness, and that's why it has been. But there was so much black marketing going on and so many things there. So now we are out of that phase, but in some places still there, remote areas still there. So remdesivir is not a magic bullet here. Okay, it is good. It will reduce it. It will help definitely. It's not that it's not going to help it. So choice should be on based on your liver function test and kidney function test. Because kidney function test gets deranged if patient is not remdesivir and is already deranged, it is going to affect more. So that is a very key important point one has to make. Role of sanitized nasal spray. UK and Canada has done a trial of it. Phase 3 trial is over and they are coming out of it. They probability say that the initial phase of viral load in the nasal and oral cavity, it is going to decrease that and they have proven it. It will come soon in the market and it will help you. But it will maybe not be total game changer, we will say, but to some extent it will. Recently, you might have heard about the Cadila Piggy has come out with the interferon, which is already there in the other for other use like viral hepatitis B. We are using it. It is relatively safe, single dose. They have done a trial in 2,800 patients, found a very effective, and they said that within a 7 days from COVID positive to COVID negative has happened. So interferon is going to be a promising. So it will help total mortality, morbidity is going to go. And cost will, now our DRDO has come out a very wonderful drug, which actually by called 2DG. This has recently been made available day before yesterday or yesterday only our health minister has received the pack from it, and very simple. It's a 5 sachet, half in the morning and half in the evening can be given. And it is going to work for a mild and moderate case. Whether it will be effective in the severe cases is doubtful, because severe cases usually are because of cytokine storm and multi-organs start functioning in a bad way. So whether it will be effective, because this kills the cells for glucation mechanism. So this is one thing we have to understand. Role of immunomodulator. Double-edged sword. A big decision one has to take it, to give it, not to give it. If patient does not have any signs of septicemia, because here it might prevent the cytokine storm. You will find a drastic improvement in the radiological picture of the lungs, but then infection catch and the things goes out of way, out of control. Some patients it has definitely helped. Those studies, P.J. Chandigarh is doing baricitinib study and they're finding a good result. Unless their study comes published, we can't say so much. But in some patients, I have used it. Tocilizumab, I have seen the result. But some patients we have lost in, not personally, but what my clinician friends tells me, depending on that. I haven't used tocilizumab personally, though I've seen my other physicians using, and I used to be in touch with some patient. One young patient died after he had a massive improvement, but then we lost him because of secondary infection, right? So this is a double-edged sword. Let the decision take it to the consensus of the patient and patient's relative. Okay? Naturally, patient will not be, because he is already on ventilator. It's better use before he is on ventilator. That is what it said. Once ventilator, big question mark. So now talk about the post-COVID. Okay, there are, as I mentioned, almost all organs gets affected. We talk from the brain to the heart, everything is getting affected. So I'm not trying to scare you, but this is likely. So be aware any symptoms, even dental ache, toothache can be because of post-COVID symptom, right? So on an average, 2-3 important one is headache, extreme fatigue, and mood changes, insomnia, loss of taste. This is a record. 44% recovered patients still have some worsening because of lung involvement and post-COVID syndromes, either neurological affection, like we have seen a GBS involvement, post-COVID and COVID. We know that has happened. Heart problems, 70% recovery usually have heart problems, sudden tachycardia, that is there. Okay, so these are the things which we have noticed. Mucormycosis, the talk of the town, you can say it now, requires an ENT dental ophthalmic evaluation. Okay. So at the smallest down, do a fungal staining. Blood collector manner can pick up because it's based on the protein which can be picked up aspergillus coating, and X-ray and CT scan. There are various types of drugs available: polyenes, azoles, nicocandines. Most of them, itraconazole, posaconazole, voriconazole, these are effective drugs which can be used, but best is the amphotericin B. But depending upon the laboratory parameter, because it affects the liver as well as the kidney. So choice of drug has to be decided by the physician. How to prevent fibrosis post-COVID? This is very, unfortunately, we do not have various studies now at present, but it is said that antifibrotic nintedanib and pirfenidone, both are now we are using, but mostly pirfenidone. We will come to know that this drug is used for interstitial lung disease, but I believe that it is going to affect the morbidity and mortality. In some cases, it's definitely start with 200 milligrams 3 times a day, then gradually build up to higher dosage, depending on the lab parameter. So this is one very good which is going to, but then other supportive, what Deepaji was talking about, talking about, this is a very important role. Psychosocial, psychological and social aspect of this time. Patients are isolated, they are kept in the room. I've seen a lot of cases discussing, and here a soothing voice from a doctor, a psychology, or a friend will make a lot of wonder. Recently, I was treating a very old patient of 78 years, of discharged with a almost score of 21/25, and he has almost given up sort of thing. But his daughter was very supportive. We made a group of it and we convinced him. We tried to pacify him. We tapered steroid, give a good antibiotic coverage, elevated moon, give a chest physiotherapy, and within 7 days his oxygen support was withdrawn. And now he's up and moving in the home. So this can make a difference with a good physician, good psychologist, good social support. It will help the patient. And I say breathing exercise very, very, very crucial. There are so many asanas there, Vasrika and other asanas. They are very, very important. You have to learn those, do it regularly, and that. And I believe nutritional therapy role plays a very, very important, very, very. Had the immunity been good, we have taken a proper precaution, COVID would not touch. But having touched, I've seen a lot of patients who are immunologically well, they have strong immunity, they are on high protein diet, a lot of vitamins and minerals, and doing physical exercise, little yoga exercise, the recovery was faster. I believe there are certain very good herbal preparation, though in medical science it has not been taught, particularly allopathy, but literature mentions a lot about it. One of these like Echinacea is a wonderful herbal preparation which has helped a lot. Well, thistle, Echinacea, they are the very good. Echinacea is an antiviral, immunomodulator. Basaka is another one, which I believe is working very well. I've treated a lot of patients on that. So holistic approach ultimately is very, very crucial. Now, what about the Covaxin, which is safer? Or Covishield is safer? We don't have Covaxin too much. Should we go for Covishield? Individually, there is a debatable topic, but whichever is available, particularly I say to young generation, please avoid Covishield because as it's been banned due to various reason, particularly they are developing cerebrovascular episodes, syncopal attack, and some deaths have been reported even pregnant patient. So Covishield should be avoided as much as possible. Covaxin unfortunately supplies less, but elderly patient who do not have any allergic reaction, other things should go for at least 45 plus can go for a Covishield. Younger generation, my advice is to prefer they should go for a Covaxin. Who should take? Everybody, unless and until you have a severe immunological reaction or anything, consult your doctor. In their presence, you should go. Does it guarantee? Absolutely not. We have seen patients who have taken both the doses of vaccine. They had COVID-1 in 2020, developing COVID-2. Now again, some patients recovered. Some of patients have died. Some patients are still struggling. So nothing, but something is better than so. Vaccination should be continued. Now there are a lot of debate going on, but I'm not going into detail of them. So with last, I would say, don't delay in treatment. Don't panic. Be alert and consult your senior physician. Thank you so much for patient listening. And I wish every one of you to stay safe, stay healthy, and let's win this war against the COVID together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. That was very informative. We have some questions in our Q&A box. There were a lot of discussions like how do we do if I'm on a home-based care, there is a tendency that we tend to sometimes overdo medication. If we just follow what the other crowd is doing. So maybe hoarding medicines, hoarding the oxygen cylinder, not knowing exactly when to use what medicine, but since other people are talking about it, so maybe I should also start doing. So those kind of thought process and thinking I have seen in many people who were tested positive, although and the correct use of oximeter, like you said, is very important, like not very frequent, but when it's required, when do you need to monitor how black fungal can be identified well enough in time, what kind of antiviral, what kind of effects it has on the body, because everybody was responding to COVID in a different way. So we have some questions in our Q&A box, so if you can take those questions and then we can summarize the sessions. So just for all the participants, if you have posted any question in the chat box, shift it to the Q&A box, because we'll be taking questions from the Q&A box only. So there's a question, if a PTS has fever on 5th day, if a patient has fever on 5th day, should we start anticoagulant along with the steroids?
Very important question. As I said, always you look for your RT-PCR, you look for your blood test. How much is the CRP? Naturally, D-dimer doesn't rise at that level. Suppose it is rise, and you have already started with antiviral drugs. Okay, steroid I prefer to give it after I started antiviral, because there was some saying that if you start steroid at the very beginning, probably viral replication will go. So prefer to go to start a day or two on antiviral drugs for the favipiravir. How much it works out, we don't know, but still it is better to give it and then start on steroid. Anticoagulant, I prefer to start it on the day 5th or day 6th, depending on the D-dimer or your what are the other. And if IL-6 is higher, normally even if it's double or even little higher, then it is safe. Oral anticoagulant is relatively safer. So I've not seen in my personally treating almost 2000 cases, I've not seen anybody having developing any complication. So day 5, if your parameters are high and you have taken antiviral, start steroid, you know. But the dose, I said, depends on your laboratory and clinical symptom.
Sure. There's one more connecting question, so I'll go to that question directly. How long oral anticoagulant need to be given if one started?
Yeah, very good question. There is standard guidelines is there for a mild to moderate cases. Normally 10-day course is what has been advocated. If it is moderate to severe, then it is advocated for 2 weeks to 20 days. And in severe cases, those who have in the hospitalization where you given oral injectable, the total dosage of injectable but oral anticoagulant is almost 30 days. The various literature has mentioned the different doses. So this is standard practice will follow.
Can 2-DG be given to diabetics?
See, presently this study which has come about it, they have not mentioned that somebody is contraindication for it. So we don't have much data about it. So presently they have not mentioned any contraindication for it.
So next question is when antifibrotic drugs needs to be started and for how long?
Normally for a mild cases where the CT score is less and after that the X-ray evaluation, I prefer to do a plain X-ray chase because repeat CT will take a longer time to correct. Plain X-ray chase will give you a rough idea about it, how much. If there is a mild involvement, because this drug is one little bit on interstitial lung disease. We don't have any classical studies of whether it has prevented fibrosis in a COVID patients or not. So in that case, mild, you don't need to start it with moderate stage severity, with breathing difficulty. You can start with a mild, a little lesser dose of 200 milligram 3 times a day. And you can carry it for a month or so and review it again.
Okay. So some more information on steroid dosing and how to taper it. One of the participants would like to know. So how steroid should be taken, what kind of and how should be the dose be there, because that
Very,
has ripple effects.
yeah, very, very important questions. And thank you for asking this question. As I mentioned in my talk, steroid dose depend on everything on the clinical parameter, in the severity of the disease which we assess, comorbid conditions, and monitoring the blood sugar. On an average, 8 milligram twice a day methaqualone is a good dose if patient has got a CT involvement and patient has a relatively high CRP or interleukin score. In some patients, as I there is a very good talk by Shankara Chetty from South Africa who treated 4,000 patients only on steroid and promethazine. Wonderful talk. I would like you to all of to go to that talk. And though the Western world which talks about so much evidence-based medicine and all those and double randomized clinical trial and those things, that's he's given a very beautiful. He said high dose of 80 milligram BD. I don't prefer to go such a high dose because I have not given in any patient. Most of the patient maximum dose was 32 milligram BD for a day or two. That's good enough. Dexa, if you have a 6 milligram to 8 milligram BD is good enough. Otherwise, on an average, 8 milligram BD to start with or a 16 milligram BD depending on the parameter. And as I said, need to consider other comorbid condition. So that is a relatively safe drug. And if you find after 3 days, you need to repeat sometime IL-6 and that is rising, then you have to give an additional dose of it. So you might go up to 48 milligram, you might very rare. I don't like to go to Solometrol or 40 milligram BD in all patients, though clinically in ICU setup they are doing it. But for a very short duration, one give it because it's like I say, again, double-edged sword, chances of developing infection is very high.
Okay, next question is about the new vaccine that is in the vaccine family. So please tell in details about the Sputnik vaccine.
Sputnik vaccine is again, as I said, less experience about in India. Russian studies mostly there. And as we said, the Covishield and Sputnik comes in the similar group of vaccine. And there are certain disadvantages, like some reactions have been noticed to it. So I'm little scary and wary about it. I personally, my preferred choice is the Covaxin.
Thank you. Next question is how to calculate the initial dose of insulin for diabetics who are on oral hypoglycemic drug and their blood sugar profile worsens because of steroids.
We have a very standardized clinical practice for it. There is a diabetic glucose monitoring chart, which mention about 4 units, 200 to 250, 250 to 300, 8 units like that. Additional, no rapid or rapid acting insulin has to be a single bolus dose can be given. But I prefer an oral antidiabetic drug, particularly like repaglinide, which works as a post glycemic to control the blood sugar and its action is larger. Then this particular oral hypoglycemic drug can be better added if you have a lesser level of blood sugar. Okay. If that blood sugar is going high every time more than 300, then a single bolus of insulin, rapid insulin 6 unit, give it, monitor after hourly. If it is more than 250, again give 6 unit. So 1, 2, 3, 4 shots you might have to give it. A patient who's a diabetic and a high dose on steroid. So that particular 1 or 2 days you require to monitor very closely. And if continue to have like that, then you might have to add in Lantus in the night dose of 4 to 6 or 8 or 12 units in the addition, depending on the blood sugar parameter in the night, pre-dinner, post-dinner and fasting. So this is a standard way of doing it and it works out very well.
Thank you, sir. So there's a question on what is the percent of COVID positive for second time? Like people are being infected again in the second wave. So what is the general pattern? Like how many of them get infected? How difficult it is to handle? Does it get worse with second time being positive? So what are your thoughts on that, sir?
Very important question, but again, this question is quite of debate. We don't have any statistics now. Recently, some time back, there was a report from that Gangaram who have received, the hospitals, Gangaram doctors have received 2 doses of Covishield, became positive. Some of them had minor and some of them had a little bit moderate symptoms. 1 or 2 patients who doctor need to be admitted. So we don't have any data particularly yet now. So what we are following is that preferably vaccinate yourself. Best go for a Covaxin, Covishield, whichever you get it, but Covaxin is the preferred drug, preferred vaccine, which I say. So, as I said it, in my clinical practice, I have noticed a person who was healthy, doing regular exercise, non-alcoholic, non-smoker, from a political background, he had received 2 vaccines, 2 doses of Covishield, had COVID infection the first time, again he had, and he's still admitted in hospital with a moderate to severe grade of lung involvement. So don't say that, that's not the biggest mistake people were doing. I've taken both the vaccines, I'll have mild symptoms and I'll not have, and they didn't bother to monitor and they landed with the problem. It is just a general guideline that you follow this, but take a precautionary step. And if you develop, nobody knows you are going to develop a severe or mild. A lot of doctors are getting admitted in spite of that. So please be the alert and see your parameter. Lab parameters are the best guide which will tell you how the things are going.
Right, sir. I completely agree. We have to take precaution despite even we had been positive in past or we have taken vaccine. Precaution is the key. So the next question is, does BV ECMO, sorry, I'm not a technical person, so I might pronounce it wrong, has a role in patient with ARDS due to COVID-19?
ECMO. So I could relate that. See, ECMO, as you all know, that works in that it is a heart-lung machine, bypass machine, you can say. So ECMO is definitely, unfortunately, in India, we don't have many centers which have the ECMO facility. But patients who are actually are not supported thoroughly ventilator and who have some cardiac involvement, actually lung is absolutely getting involved there. So these patients might benefit on ECMO. And we have seen it's patient likely to benefit. In COVID-1, I have seen their patient recovered once put on ECMO. So it is going to be beneficial to them also. But again, it's a multi-organ failure sets in. So whether it is going to make because other factors will start playing role. How's your liver function is there? How's your kidney function? ECMO will take care of your most of the 2 organs basically, though it takes off the other load. And then patient put on dialysis also along with that. So the recovery chances. So many other factors. So ECMO is a better option whenever we need it. But unfortunately, in India, we don't have so many ECMOs.
So the next question is, what are the investigations to be done after recovery?
Very good questions on that side. See, first, as you know, the talk of town I'm saying is now like mucormycosis, right? So if you have a slightest symptoms of visual disturbance, consult ophthalmologist. If you have any nasal discharge or some white mucus patch or something, you need to work for that. That's I've shown a slide on that. To look for anything is there. But don't care, don't get panic about it. After I get a lot of questions on that. I was on steroid, will I develop mucormycosis? No doctor is like a Jyotishi who will tell you will develop or not. So what you have to do is, basically if you're required, continue monitoring sometimes CRP, but not regularly. CRP is a good indicator of what is happening about the inflammatory process in ACRP and CRP. Interleukin, once you have done it has come down, it is very unlikely to shoot up. Even if it shoots up for some time, it is not because of the, because in IL-6 is not only cytokine indicator, something, it's also an indicator of infection of it's an inflammatory marker sort of thing. So it's very, sometimes you have to, the basic LFT, KFT, the LFT which was deranged has come down to normal. KFT in some patients who was on remdesivir, another drug, we look to monitor. So LFT, KFT, CBC. Then if like there is a shift to the left in the CBC, that might show you on peripheral smear for toxic granule. That can show you like you might have some lung infection. So these are the basic laboratory parameters you do it. Routinely, you do a routine exercise, walk, see your pulse oximeter. If that as long as going on good, nothing to worry about it. Only basically this lab parameter we can do. And I said, if you have a suspicion of the galactomannan test or a fungal staining can be done to find out an ophthalm checker or an ENT once visit. But don't just go into the ENT specialist, see, do you have the mucormycosis? No, it's not needed.
Okay, it's not a question exactly, it's a kind of a statement, but we would like to know your thoughts on that. Recurrent of loose motion nowadays is a symptom of COVID without fever. So you have talked about the new symptoms that has developed with the virus now. So what are the kind of more general statement? I think this is this you have spoken about, but what are your thoughts on this? What else people should monitor that it might be a symptom of COVID?
So loose motion can be one of the symptoms of COVID and post-COVID both, right? This is the happening there. So as a physician or clinician, I'll have a high suspicion of doubt, but I'll start to work on whether there is another cause of. Recently, I had my wife's friend's wife had sort of, she took a second vaccine and sometime she had started developing a fever and she developed a loose motion. And initially we thought that probably she got an exposure to it could be COVID. But here the role of a clinician or anybody, we have to find out whether she, then later on I asked her, did you have food from outside that day? I said, yeah. After we initially started thinking of COVID and trying, we didn't start a treatment of COVID. So it could be a part and process of any other gastroenteral disease. It could be process of an IBS. A lot of psychological stress people are developing and that's leading to IBS type of presentation. So this loose motion and diarrhea, what we call, is not alone because of COVID. It can be COVID, it can be because mainly because of any other symptom. So that you have to judge, a clinician will judge, and you have to investigate accordingly. One more, because now you have asked this thing. I've recently, unfortunately, put an incident. One of my known to friends, a friend, wife was been treated because of laboratory parameters. She had a fever, and a local physician, I don't know what was his level, but he did a Vidal test and it came out to be positive. It is a false positive test. He was treating as a Vidal enteric fever, positive enteric fever, and the patient suddenly deteriorated, was brought into the hospital with 60% oxygen saturation. Fortunately, for her luck, we could save her. But to my physician friends, another thing, this is a false positive test. So please don't just treat as an enteric fever. But again, you have to have a claim. I said that is the one example. Other example, I did not treat my wife's friend's wife as a, I treated her as a enteric fever and she recovered completely. So it's a clinical judgment with the help of a laboratory parameter.
If fever persists even after 5 days and D-dimer remain normal, then is it necessary to start anticoagulants?
Very good question. I said I don't give any most value initially in the D-dimer. As I said, D-dimer usually do not rise in the first week. Most of the cases I think it does not rise. D-dimer start rising when the particularly a cytokine storm starts working on it. First week, there is very, there is no cytokine storm in the first week. As I said, sometimes it is called 7-day syndrome or 8-day syndrome. So in fact, D-dimer is not the only indicator. As I said, CRP and IL-6. IL-6 goes on. It's an inflammatory marker. And if the higher level goes on, it is suggestive of likely cytokine storm. There you need to start a anticoagulant. Just don't rely totally on D-dimer.
Can vaccine be given to pregnant and lactating women?
I will always like an opinion from a gynecologist personally, because that's a big question. Relatively, though they say both as literature say it should be avoided, but again with the consultation of any gynecologist. So I'll keep my comment reserved for here.
So, ivermectin used as a prophylactic dose for all people because of pandemic. Is it the correct way?
Yeah, initially as the Australian research was done there and they found it's a wonder drug has come, though we know the ivermectin as antiparasitic, we were using it. Somebody jokingly said because it is so being used, so it's the national anti-health program has been covered. So ivermectin was used initially to knowing that in vitro it was found to be anti-virucidal virucidal effect. Later on, it has been suggested probably it is working in two ways. One, as an antiviral, partially, very partially, minimally, and like an immunomodulator and anti-inflammatory action. So that's why I said this is only a initial phase of it. Prophylactically, like somebody else said, my friend and they will have never met him, so should I start prophylactic? There is no role of ivermectin. Initially, when the first COVID came, SCQ and ivermectin prophylactically. Now it has been proven out that anti-ivermectin has no role as a prophylactic.
Does COVID has an effect on thyroid and management in both in hypo and hyper?
Absolutely, absolutely. Both. It's considered comorbid. And as I mentioned in my slide, COVID can manifest as a hypothyroid or thyroidoptosis, or post-COVID also have shown to have some deranged thyroid parameter. So a clinical physician will always look at that. Recently, one of my friends, one of my brother's wife, actually, she has known case of rheumatic heart disease and her thyroid parameter changed, and that has led to her tachycardia and she need to be hospitalized. So post-COVID is to affect the thyroid parameters.
Any role of IVLG in managing COVID-19?
IVIG, yeah, that is IVIG, yeah, IVIG. Actually, some of places it has been mentioned that, but as I said, IVIG, as all of us know, that it does not as of antiviral property. Only in cases of patients who have got some neurological deficiency, they have given, but not per se, it has not been widely used. And it is not in the standard protocol, WHO has not mentioned anywhere, or the national bodies of any other recommendation have not given IV as a role in COVID as such. But one of few patients which we have found a GBS, if you know, there is one of big shots in the industrial area who developed a GBS in the COVID-20. And unfortunately, people could not diagnose at the early phase. But later on, he was. Even in our cases, I have an experience in COVID 2019. We had one case with the GBS and responded very well with IVIG.
Next question is, if patient has diabetic ketoacidosis on detection of COVID needs steroids, then how it has been done?
Simple answer, he should be admitted and let the physician manage that case. Don't take panga with this. Diabetic ketosis is a little dangerous condition. Patient can lose it. So let the patient and physician, a senior physician and his team is very competent. They manage it on the steroid if need to be continued. Insulin, there is a standard purification. Insulin, electoral balance has to be maintained. IV fluid should be properly. ABG parameters has to be taken care of. Hypokalemic is to be taken care of. There are various other parameters. Standard management of diabetic ketosis has carried out. Don't leave that patient at home. No, please hospitalize.
What are treatment options for pregnancy? What about contraindication?
You're talking of favipiravir or anything, any particular question, or you're talking of COVID pregnancy you're talking about?
Yeah, COVID pregnancy.
Yeah. Actually, this is not my area, so I'll not like to say, because yesterday also we had a good talk, and I would suggest few people to, maybe you will have to call one of the gynecologists who will be better able to tell, because this is a totally different subject.
Okay. So I think we can skip the last question because we have already spoken about the ivermectin as prophylactic drug. So thank you. That's the questions from the participants, and thank you for addressing all the questions. Really, thank you, heartfelt thank you. You took out time from your busy schedule and today gave the detailed insights of what can the holistic approach be, to till what level the home-based care should be taken, what level a patient can take care of himself, what after that, clinical and a medical expert advice is required. So just thank you on that. And on that note, only the Google and WhatsApp University doesn't help. We definitely need to be in touch with our doctors, know more about what is happening with us, be alert about the symptoms and how the body is reacting, and seek medical care. And don't delay in that. So thank you, Dr. Kotekar, for being with us today. I would hand over to my colleague Paramita for the closing remarks.
Thank you, Deepa. Thank you, Kotekar sir. I think today's session was really knowledgeable. First and foremost, we would like to thank our partner, SBI Foundation. Before we leave, I would just want all the participants to kindly fill in the feedback link because that's important to us. And also the upcoming sessions that we have as of now. I'm sure today's session was interactive and interesting, and everybody is looking forward for the next sessions. So the next upcoming session we have is with Professor Dr. S. Natarajan, who would be talking on how to stay safe, stay protected, and stay healthy. It's upcoming on Friday, May 21st. After which we have Dr. Rati Balachandran, who would be talking on role of nursing professionals during the COVID-19 crisis, which we would be having on May 25th. And after that, we have Dr. Vijay Negalur, who would be speaking on May 29th on COVID-19 diagnosis and management. Finally, in the month of May, we will be ending with Dr. Sangeeta Goswami, who would be talking on enhancing emotional well-being, self-compassion. Thank you, everyone. I wish you all stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you once again.
Thank you, everybody. Namaskar.